Are you ready to make a greater impact? Are you ready to step into who it is that you were meant to be by using your gifts and superpowers in a way that you can make an impact and change on people around you's lives? Well, if so, there's a very specific area that you need to make sure that you focus on and that you learn to master what it looks like. And it's something that we don't always talk a lot about, and it's this idea of vulnerability. Now, there are some people who are feel like they're held back, that they're chained down by perfectionism. And what we want to do is we want to embrace this idea of vulnerability. So we're going to dive into that. My name is Jake Talbert, and I'm the founder and chief giver over at the GIVER Method. If you're new here, welcome. What the GIVER Method is all about, GIVER is an acronym, which stands for helping people to find their gifts and superpowers so that they can then take those gifts and find the right people to have an influence on, an impact, and be super intentional with, so that they can create value for them in a way that's so clear and vivid. And we do it in a way we don't ask for anything in return, and that each engagement, interaction, discussion is as eager and effective as possible. When you do this, you are able to step into who it is that you were meant to be. You're able to make a greater impact in not only your life, but the lives of those around you. So there's a lot of things that come with that. Now, along with developing these superpowers is we have to be vulnerable. It comes into play with developing the superpower, with impacting the right people and delivering value and in different interactions. So that's why we're going to be covering this topic today. Now, I will throw out there, it might be a little uncomfortable because talking about ourselves in this way sometimes can be uncomfortable. But trust me, it is going to change your life. Now, we're talking about the true power of vulnerability in both personal and professional growth, right? Now, you may be thinking to yourself, hold on, Jake. Vulnerability is a weakness that I can't show that in my work or my personal life. But what if I told you that embracing that vulnerability could actually be a secret superpower that propels you forward? Now, we're going to dive into that. Before we do, if you have not already, please like the channel, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, like this video, comment your thoughts along the way, and when ready, share it with someone who may need it, because I guarantee you know someone who does. You can also check us out on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn under the GIVER Method, or at thegivermethod.com. The more that you identify these things and share them out with people, the greater ripple effect we can create of positive change in other people's lives. So please help us on our mission to impact as many people as we can. So we also don't want you to miss out on any content or anything like that. So please, subscribe to the channel so that we can help you to unlock potential and become a true giver. So I've got some principles we're going to cover, some ideas around this idea of vulnerability. For each one, I'm going to cover a little bit about it. I'm going to tell you some stories, and then there's going to be an action item. So I highly recommend that as we get to the action items, that you pull out a piece of paper, write down some ideas, some thoughts on it, or pull up a note, whatever that may look like, so that you can take these action items. Because I promise you, if you start doing these things today, this week, this month, it's going to help you on this path of developing yourself, developing your gifts and superpowers. It's going to help you make deeper, more meaningful connections with others, which leads towards creating that greater impact on their lives. So let's dive into this. Principle number one, I kind of hit on already with a little bit. It's this idea of imperfection, and that we need to embrace it. So often we think that we have it all together. But the truth is, nobody does. I'm actually preparing to teach a lesson at church on Sunday, and this is a principle I'm going to be covering. So if anyone's watching this video from church and it's before Sunday, surprise, we're going to be talking about this idea. But we don't all have it together. There's so many things, there's so many imperfections that we have. Showing your imperfections can actually make you so much more relatable and trustworthy to others. I remember as I first started working through this idea of the GIVER Method, I was terrified that I would say the wrong thing or that I would make mistakes. I didn't have the answers. I wouldn't know how to navigate a conversation. But one day I was working with some individuals, and I opened up and was honest about it. I'm like, look, I've got some doubt. I didn't say I doubt. I've got some, I struggle with this area because it could be things like X, Y, Z. And I just kind of let it sit and let them marinate on the thoughts a bit and kind of co-create with me what that experience was going to be like. And you know what happened? It shifted the entire feeling. Person I was working with, they started opening up. They shared their own insecurities, and it was a super powerful session that we got to experience together, and we got to draw closer together by doing. And it was by looking at it from the imperfections I have, the imperfections they have, and how we grow together. So your action item here, once again, get off that piece of paper, that note. I want you to try to do a vulnerability challenge. Each day this week, share something that you are struggling with or a mistake you've made with someone that you trust. And keep keep a journal of how these moments of vulnerability affect your relationships and your self-perception. This can come into look in all sorts of ways. I know for a fact that, as I started working with clients in small businesses, especially over 10 years ago, the decisions I make, the things I tell them to do, the coaching I do, it can have an impact on their entire business and the trajectory it's on. It could help them grow fast, or it could slow them down. And so people would ask questions, and there's a long time where I tried to put on the confident face that I knew what I was talking about. And it wasn't until I'd be like, you know what? I don't really know. Give me a chance to go look into it so I can see exactly how it's going to work for you. And then I'll get back to you. And it totally changed how the clients perceived it, where they were so much happier. It wasn't that they were hearing me say what I thought was the right thing, and if they know it's not the right thing, that they're like, yeah, you're lying. It was me being open and honest in that sort of a world. So practice this idea of this vulnerability challenge, okay? Principle number 2 is all about cultivating courage. Being vulnerable, it takes guts, my friends. Like, there's no other way of putting it. It's about facing your fears and showing up as your true, authentic self, even when it's scary. Oftentimes there's a joke by Chris Rock where he says, when you go on a first date with someone, you're not going on a date with that person, you're going on a date with their representative, and that you don't actually realize who you're going on the date with until it's like the third or fourth date. And so we put on these representations of what we think it is, when in reality we want to be more authentic. We want to show these vulnerabilities, and like I said, it feels scary from time to time. I'll never forget a time where I had to I was doing a workshop, a presentation with a group of small business owners at an event, and I was really nervous, and my instinct was to put on this facade of this confidence, but instead I was just honest. I started by saying, like, hey guys, everyone, I'm really nervous. A lot of people I look up to, and I know that you know this world, and so, but this topic means a lot to me, and I want to make sure that I do it justice and that I show you through the lens that I'm looking at, so it can make the greater impact in what you are trying to do in your business. And the energy changed immediately. The people, they leaned in, they were nodding, they connected with me on that more of a human level based off of that. So the action item here that I want you to think about is take and come up with maybe 3 situations in your personal or professional life where you've been holding back due to fear. And for each situation, what I want you to do is identify what's one small step forward that you could do, that you're facing your fear, and you could just do one small step forward this week. Just one small step. You don't have to go solve the whole fear, the whole problem, or the whole thing, but just do one step forward. And then reflect on how these acts of courage, regardless of the outcome, contributed to your growth. It may feel like it was small and insignificant. Over time, though, that will start to build, and it will start to build and build and build, creating so much more courage, in what it is that you need to discuss. Now, I know for a fact I've never been really great at sharing emotions and sharing feelings. I'm surprised my wife has put up with me as long as she did, not sharing how I felt and just bottling things up inside of me. And really, it only made things worse. It made the emotions I was feeling even worse. It made me feel alienated, and I would blow up. I'd lose my temper, and it was like there was no, from everyone outside perspective, from my wife or whoever it was, they had no idea why, but it was because I wasn't externalizing any of that. And so it was a few years back, or not a few years, I guess it's been a little bit longer than that, made this commitment that I'm going to be more open, I'm going to be more vulnerable, admitting the feelings that I have. If I'm feeling stress, if I'm feeling anxiety, if I'm feeling whatever thing, I'm going to tell you about it. And what it's done is it's actually led towards me being able to be more open with my wife, with my coworkers, with friends, family, and we all build up together. We have a support group. We're not feeling alienated. We're not feeling alone. And so it takes stepping forward and moving past that fear, being able to share the emotions as a part of that. Now, the third principle that we're going to talk about is that you need to build trust through this openness. So it kind of leans into what the story I just told you. Building trust through openness. When you are open and vulnerable, you can create this environment where others feel safe to do the same. I know that, like I said, when I started doing that myself, more people were open to start sharing how they felt and what, where they've been. So when you do that, that's where real connection happens. Now, I know for a fact, like, so I run at church, I'm in charge of all of the men who are 18 or older. And, we meet every other week and get together. We have like a discussion, a lesson or whatever. And I brought in someone to be an instructor and said, look, I want to get people opening up. I want to get these men talking about their feelings and their emotions. Like, we need them to be more vulnerable. And we talked about it as a group. And as an instructor, he invited them to share and be open, and that it's okay to have these things. Now, at first, it just took just getting people talking and opening up more. Over time, though, what we found is we now have, every time we meet, we have such more impactful discussions and a deeper connection. Like, we're fostering deeper connections with each other, because every other week when we meet, I feel like we're even more open and people are talking about their feelings. And, I've got men in the circle, as we're doing a discussion, that are tearing up because of these experiences they've had. And that's not normal, because especially men, we try to put on that facade, this thing. But it started with me being open about my journey, my experiences, and our instructor, John, having him open up about his being vulnerable about how he feels. And slowly but surely, we're starting to see that of the, let's say 50, 60 men that show up on a given Sunday, that there's more participation in the lessons and discussions, and people being way more open about things. So the action item here that I want you to do is, in your next, whatever the meeting may be, it's a group interaction, a team meeting, whatever that may look like, be the first person to share a personal story that relates to the topic at hand. You don't have to be, it doesn't have to be a super emotional story, but share a story, a personal thing. And what I want you to do is observe how this openness affects the group dynamic and encourages others to share. Note any changes in trust levels or maybe team cohesion that there may be. When we do our weekly team meeting here, the stuff I do day to day, working with small businesses and such, we always start that weekly meeting with it's on a Monday, and so we always do hey, from the weekend, what were the, what was the highlights, or what were the lessons learned? And it's really cool because people will share things like, we did this weekend, it was so amazing. But there've been plenty of times people are like, oh gosh, well, I actually had a struggle this weekend because I had this. We start the meeting with that before we get to anything else, because it draws us all in and it draws us closer in that way, creating more trust. And I want to trust the other 8 individuals that I am empowering to work with small businesses on an ongoing basis, and trusting that they've got my back, I've got their back, and that we're all working to up-level this business together. So once again, take note as you do that of the changes in any sort of trust levels that you may see. Let's see, principle number 4 is that we need to learn from our vulnerability. So this is a big thing. Every time you open up, you should learn something new about yourself or about others. It's like, if you want to accelerate your growth, especially personal growth, this is the way to accelerate it, is to learn from the vulnerability that you have. Now, I've talked a lot in my book, The GIVER Method, and in past videos about a story that I tell a lot of what imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome, not feeling like you belong in the room with the individuals that you're with. Why me? Why am I here? I don't belong here. And I tell that I went to a mastermind, and I walked in, sat down, was eating dinner, and I was excited to meet everybody. But then, they started introducing certain people, and one of them is an Olympic athlete who's won multiple medals, and he now coaches celebrities and athletes on mental wellness. We had a guy who's a Navy SEAL who has now has a show on Fox that he does. We have a woman who, helps children around the world create safe spaces for them to live and learn and things like that. The founder of Comic-Con, it goes, listen, people who I know who these people are, people I look up to, and I start realizing that's who's in the room. I don't belong here. I'm just Jake. And at breakfast the next morning, the guy who was running the event, he said, hey, I want everyone in the room, I want to talk about something, I want to talk about imposter syndrome. And I want everyone to be open and vulnerable here. So if you are in this room and you have felt imposter syndrome before, raise your hand. And every hand in the room, there was 60 people there, every hand in the room went up. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It's not just me. It's now how many of you felt that imposter syndrome when coming here and interacting with the individuals in the room? And almost every single hand stayed up. And so it showed, like, everyone looked around, and it gave everyone this chance to like be like, okay, well, I can lower my guards because we're all feeling it. Even the people I look up to, you're experiencing the same type of thing that I'm experiencing. So the action item here is that you want to, like, after a vulnerable moment this week that you identify, ask yourself 3 questions. What did I learn about myself? How did this strengthen my relationships? And like, what possibilities could this have opened up for you? And just keep a log, a journal, whatever, of the insights and reflect back on that over time. So the last principle number 5, is about practicing self-compassion. Like, being vulnerable, it sometimes can leave us feeling exposed or judged. And that's why it's crucial to have some kind of, when you have these moments, that you have some sort of self-compassion you do. I struggled with doing this myself when I first started opening up more about my journey and sharing things that were more personal, and I would spend a lot of days overthinking things. But I learned, like, you have to start creating like a mantra for yourself that, like, as I share my vulnerability, I'm gaining strength. As I share my vulnerability, I am gaining deeper relationships, and I'm sharing my relationship or my vulnerabilities. I'm building up my gifts and superpowers so I can make the greater impact in the world. I tell myself that. And it's simple phrases like this, it helps you to reframe those moments of doubt, and it encourages you to keep putting yourself out there. So the action item here is to go create yourself a self-mantra for moments where you feel exposed or judged and or you're being, vulnerable. For example, you could have those things like the I'm brave for opening up, or my vulnerability is my strength, not my weakness, things like that, or something like I said. Come up with whatever your own is. Use these mantras daily and note the effects that it has on your willingness to be more vulnerable. Now, you may be wondering, cool, Jake, there's all this, but you talked about the GIVER method and how it all plays together. Like, what has this tied to the GIVER method? I hit on it a little bit in the beginning, but vulnerability really is the heart of becoming a true giver. When you're vulnerable, you're giving to others of your gift as your authentic self. You're creating a space for real connection, and you're thinking about your unique gifts and superpowers and how you can give them to others in that way and share. And we don't find those just by all positive puppies and kittens. We find our superpowers and develop who we are through wins and losses, through struggles, setbacks, overwhelm, anxiety, you name it. Like, these are all things that happen. So, if you think about things like maybe you're great at problem-solving skills, or you have a talent for making people feel that they're heard. Well, when you combine these gifts with vulnerability, that's where the magic is going to happen. You're not just solving problems, you're connecting with people on a deeper level. You're not just listening to them, you're creating a safe space for others to be vulnerable. Oh my gosh, it's so much more impactful when I hear people, they're not like, I'm good at active listening. It's like, oh, that's cool. They're like, I create an environment where people feel safe enough to open up about the things that they don't normally open up about. And I sit and I listen so they feel heard, and they feel that they've been, supported in this and whatever. It's like that's superpower. That takes this idea, the simple idea of active listening, and shows how it is really impactful in the world. Remember, the GIVER method is about using your unique gifts and superpowers to create values for others and making, and building meaningful connections. And vulnerability is the key that unlocks this sort of a potential. So as we wrap up this idea, I want to challenge you to embrace this vulnerability in your personal and professional lives. It might be scary at first, but I promise you that the growth and connections you'll experience are worth it. So start small. Try one action item that we talked about today, or maybe if you feel comfortable, do more, but just start with one. Maybe it's vulnerability challenge. Maybe perhaps it's that self-compassion mantra. Whatever it takes, just take a step forward. Every step forward is a positive step towards you becoming who you're meant to be. Remember, vulnerability is not a weakness. It is the sign. It's actually the ultimate sign of courage that you're willing to put yourself out there. It's saying, this is me, imperfections and all, and I'm worthy to connect with you. I belong. I can support you. I can build you up. I can make an impact in your lives. Now, if you're ready to take this idea of personal growth, developing gifts and superpowers to a deeper level, then I encourage you to become a giver and join our community. Go to thegivermethod.com, sign up for our newsletter. What we do is we release exclusive tips, insights on using vulnerability or unique gifts and skills, as well as we'll let you know about when the Giver Method book gets released so that you can be one of the first people to get access to it. It also has things like if you're interested in having me come speak on a stage or be on a podcast, the services we offer, all sorts of stuff like that. So feel free to go sign up for the newsletter. If this video resonates with you, please give me the thumbs up, like the video, share it with someone else who may need it. Go check us out on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the places under the Giver Method, or like I said, at thegivermethod.com. Let's spread this power of vulnerability as far and wide as we can, because the world needs us to be open in that way. The world needs us to step into who it is we're meant to be. I believe in you. I believe that you can get there. We're ready for you to start believing in you so that you can get there. Until next time, please keep growing, keep giving, and remember, your vulnerability is actually a superpower, so use it wisely.